The storm started without warning. Heat rose off the desert like breath from a sleeping animal. The sky burned the color of a dying coal. I rode into Dry Mesa with wind in my teeth and dust on my tongue. My name is Colt Mercer. I was looking for whiskey, shade, and the kind of trouble a man keeps to himself. The saloon windows held the last light. A piano limped to a stop. A card slapped felt. Boots scuffed. Somewhere a bottle cracked. I pushed through the swinging doors and felt the storm breathe in after me. Smoke climbed slow. Lanterns swayed. The room smelled like sweat, beer, and the memory of rain. She stood at the far end, where the bar met the stair that climbed to quiet rooms. Her dress was plain, blue like a faded river, hairpin neat, eyes the color of a storm about to change its mind. She was Eliza Hartwell, though I did not know it yet, the sheriff's daughter, good stock, good manners, a soft mouth holding hard secrets. When she saw me, the world narrowed. My hat brim cut the light. Her gaze held steady. The barkeep slid me a glass. The whiskey was rough. I liked it that way. It burned and steadied me. My hands stopped shaking. Outside, thunder rolled like wagons over rock. The first drops of rain hit the warped boards and lifted dust that smelled like forgiveness. Two ranch boys were laughing near the corner, telling some story about a lost calf and a jealous wife. Their laughter died when the door opened again. Sheriff Abel Hartwell stepped in. His badge flashed, his jaw set. He looked like a man carved from a courthouse bench. He was followed by quiet, the kind that carries iron. I had met his kind in other towns, honest, heavy, dangerous when tested. He scanned faces, found mine, and held it. I did not blink. He walked slow. Everyone watched. "You ride him fast," he said. "I ride out faster," I said. A smile tried to lift his mouth. It failed. Name: Colt Mercer. Something in the room shifted when I said it. A card dropped. A chair scraped. The barkeep swallowed. A name can do that. It can turn a room colder than wind. The sheriff measured me like a tailor with a short rope. "I've heard it," he said. "Once in Eden Ridge, twice in Copper Vale." "Then it rides cleaner than I do," I said. He studied my hands, my holster, the place where my past lived. He nodded once, not friendly, not cruel, a judgment postponed. "Keep your nose out of folks' business," he said, "and your boots off their porches." He turned, and the room breathed again. He stopped when Eliza moved from the stair. Her gaze slid past her father and found me again. A small thing, that look, but it struck like a nail. The sheriff felt it. Fathers know. He put his hand on the bar, the way a man grips a rail when the river is high. "You head home," he told her. She did not move. "I will," she said. Her voice was quiet. You could hear the school bell in it, and a shuttered window, and the sound of one person telling herself to keep walking. She passed me close. Fabric-brushed leather. The scent of rain and lilac found my lungs. She did not look up, but her pulse showed at her throat. I set my glass down and told myself to leave it there. But then she whispered so low only my ribs could hear it. "Do not let him make up your mind about you." She was gone before my heart decided if it had misheard. The door slapped the storm. The sheriff watched me watch it. He did not draw. He had no cause. Not yet. He left with 2 deputies and a silence that tasted like iron in the mouth. Cards lifted, laughs returned, brittle at first. The piano tried to tune and failed. I finished my whiskey and asked for a second. I told myself to keep the edges clean. I told myself her whisper was nothing but a gust in a town with too many loose nails. Night came down fast. The storm walked the street and found its rhythm. Roofs ticked, horses stamped, a lamp guttered near the stairs. I set my back to a post and watched the mirror behind the bar. I saw faces that had learned to pretend they were fine. I knew that look. I had worn it in 6 counties. A rancher wife pushed a plate of stew at my elbow and said I looked like a man who had not eaten since yesterday. I thanked her. The stew was good, meat soft, gravy thick, pepper heavy. It reminded me of a campfire I could not return to. The door opened once more. Wind shoved it wide. 3 men came in like they owned the rain. One had a scar from ear to jaw, white as chalk. One wore a grin that made you feel like he had counted the coins in your pocket. The third was small and jumpy, a dog that had learned to bite first. They were the brothers Lyle. I knew their faces from wanted sheets and bad stories. They were trouble with boots on. Scar saw me and smiled slow. "Mercer," he said, as if he were greeting a snake he had kept as a boy. "Thought you were north of the divide." "I'm wherever the weather points me," I said. "Tonight it points you wrong." He leaned on the bar and snapped his fingers for whiskey. He drank first, and then spoke past the rim. "We got business in Dry Mesa. Sheriff says no, you can help say yes." I did not answer. Lightning cracked. The room flashed white and turned dark again. I tasted metal on my tongue. The small one shifted his weight. The grinning one counted the room and drew a map in his eyes. He nodded. "Easy," he told Scar. "No need to spill it yet." Scar looked at me over his glass. "You riding alone, Mercer?" "I usually am," I said. "Not smart," he said. "It is honest," I said. He laughed. That sound had broken teeth in it. "Honest men die in ditches." "I know," I said. "I'll pull them out when I can." He set the glass down and stood straight. "We will talk after you finish your stew." The piano quit. The barkeep found a cloth to clean a clean spot. A fly traced a slow circle in lamplight. I finished eating and pushed the plate away. I did not want a war. Not tonight. Not in a town that still dared to hope for rain. I stepped off the post and eased toward the door. Scar stepped with me. The small one touched his coat where a pistol hid. The grinning one smiled wider, as if he had rehearsed this in a mirror. The storm met me at the threshold. The street was a black ribbon. Water ran in the gutters. The air felt new. I could have turned left and vanished. I could have turned right and found a bed that did not ask questions. I stood still and heard a second set of footsteps in the rain. Eliza moved out from the dark where the sheriff's office cast its shadow. She had no umbrella. Rain stitched her hair to her neck. Her eyes were bright. Not scared. Something else. A decision that had not yet learned to live with itself. "Walk," she said, one word, a command softer than a prayer. I went with her along the edge of the boardwalk. Scar and his men stayed inside, talking low. The storm covered our tracks. My hat brim kept the water off her face when she stepped close. Her shoulder brushed my arm. Heat met cold. The world shrank to the sound of rain on wood and our feet finding a rhythm. "You should be somewhere safe," I said. "I am not," she said, "but I will be if you listen." She stopped near the alley behind the mercantile. Crates stacked. A stray cat blinked from a barrel. Water dripped from a broken gutter and a slow clock. She looked up into my face. She was not shy. She was not bold. She was a person who had reached the end of quiet. "My father is about to make a mistake," she said, "and I am about to make one of my own." I waited. I could feel the night lean in. "What he did not know," she said, and her voice thinned, "was that I gave the brothers Lyle what they came for. I thought it would end something. It began something else." Silence held. The rain agreed with itself and kept falling. My hands felt too empty for the weight of what she had said. "Tell me what," I said. She swallowed. "A key to the lockbox in his office. He never told me what is inside, only that it is proof of a past someone would kill for. Now they will." She looked toward the sheriff's dark window. A lamp flickered there. A man's shadow crossed and returned. Her breath shook once, then stilled. She stepped closer. Heat rose between us like a low fire. I could smell lilac and wet dust. The edge of her palm brushed my coat. Not a plea, not a promise. Just a touch that said we were both real. If this story warmed a small corner of your night, stay with it. The rain still has more to say. The night stretched thin, heavy with rain and what she had confessed. Eliza's eyes searched mine, looking for something steady, something that would not break. I had nothing steady left in me, just scars, miles, and the sound of storms that never stopped. "You gave them the key," I said. "You knew who they were." She nodded. "I thought they'd leave once they had it. I was wrong." Her voice trembled like a lantern flame in wind. Somewhere down the street thunder cracked close enough to shake the windows. The cat hissed and vanished. She stood still, her shoulders square, her hands cold and bare. "Why tell me?" I asked. "Because you're not afraid to get your hands dirty," she said, "and because I've seen the way you look at danger, like it's the only thing that still feels honest." Her words cut close to truth. I hated truth when it came from beautiful mouths. I wanted to believe her, but I knew better than to trust the first whisper of redemption. "What's in that lockbox?" I asked. "I don't know," she said, "but whatever it is, it can ruin him. Maybe worse." The sound of boots splashing through puddles came from the far end of the alley. She looked over my shoulder and stepped back. I caught her wrist, gentle but firm. "Stay behind me," I said. 3 shadows moved under the lamplight. Scar and his men again. They had followed quiet, waiting for her to come to me. They were patient snakes. Scar's grin found us through the rain. Well, if that ain't a fine sight, the sheriff's little bird and the man he warned her about. Eliza's breath caught. The small one cocked his head and smiled. The grinning one lifted his coat. Steel glinted beneath. Scar raised his hand. "You've got something that belongs to me, Mercer." "You mean what she gave you," I said, "or what you think she owes?" He laughed. "Both." The small one moved first. I drew faster. My gun barked once, and his shadow folded into the mud. The other 2 froze. The storm swallowed the sound. Smoke rose thin from my barrel. Scar's grin twisted. "You just bought yourself a grave." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm still breathing." He lunged, pulling iron. I fired again. The bullet caught his shoulder, spun him sideways. The grinning one ran. Boots splashing through puddles like wild drums. Scar hit the wall, clutching his arm. Blood dark in the rain. Eliza hadn't moved. She was stone, eyes wide, breath short. I holstered my gun and stepped closer. "You all right?" I asked. She nodded slow. "You killed him." "Not yet," I said, "but he'll remember me." She shivered, rain mixing with tears. I took off my coat and draped it over her shoulders. She looked up, confused by a kindness that came from a man she should have feared. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "Neither should you," I said. "But here we are." Scar groaned against the wall. "You don't know what you just started, Mercer. You'll wish you'd let me finish my drink." "I never wish for anything," I said. "It saves time." He spat blood and smiled like a broken mirror. "That box ain't about the sheriff. It's about you." The words slid into the rain like poison. I froze. "What did you say?" He laughed, winced, and pushed himself upright. "Ask her father. Ask him what he did in Elmsford 10 years ago." I reached for him, but he slipped into the dark, limping, leaving a trail the rain would soon erase. Eliza's hand found my sleeve. "Colt," she whispered. "Well, now, what does he mean?" I looked at her, then toward the sheriff's office. Light still burned behind those windows, steady as guilt. "It means I can't leave this town. Not yet." The wind shifted. Rain turned softer, almost kind. She pulled the coat tighter around herself and stood close, near enough that I could feel her heartbeat through the wet cloth. "My father isn't the man you think," she said. "I don't think anything yet," I said, "but I'll find out." She swallowed. "He'll kill you if you go near that box." "I've been killed before," I said. Her lips parted. The fire in her eyes softened to something that hurt worse than bullets. "Why do you talk like you've already lost?" "Because I have, I said a long time ago." She reached up, touched the scar on my cheek with trembling fingers, then stopped looking for ghosts in other people's storms. Her touch was warm despite the rain. I wanted to step back. I didn't. For a heartbeat, everything went still. The thunder, the wind, even the guilt. Then she turned away, her skirt brushing my leg as she walked into the dark. The echo of her footsteps lingered like smoke. I watched until she was gone. I stayed in the alley until the rain began to fade. The sky opened just enough to show the edge of dawn, pale and quiet. My gun was cold, my thoughts colder. Inside the sheriff's office, that lockbox waited, small, iron, and holding something that tied her betrayal to my past. I could almost hear it whisper my name. I walked back toward the saloon. The street smelled like wet dust and spent fire. The barkeep watched me through the window, shaking his head. I pushed through the doors and went to the bar. He poured whiskey without asking. "Heard gunfire," he said. "Rain plays tricks," I said. He grunted. "Sheriff's looking for you." Then I'll save him the trouble." He looked up, eyes narrowing. "You sure you want that?" "No," I said to Mom, "but I'll do it anyway." I left my glass half full and stepped into the morning. The rain had stopped. The street gleamed like a wound just beginning to close. I walked toward the sheriff's office, each step heavy, each breath remembering her voice. When I reached the porch, the door creaked open. Sheriff Hartwell stood there, gun belt slung low, eyes sharp. He looked like a man who hadn't slept. "You and I need to talk," he said. "I figured," I answered. He nodded once. Slow. "Come inside, Mercer. It's time you learn what kind of lies keep this town breathing." I followed him in. The door closed behind me, sealing us from the light. If this story has found a spark in your heart, stay close. The truth's just begun to bleed through the rain. The sheriff's office smelled of tobacco, rain, and old law. A single lamp burned low on the desk, throwing shadows across the wanted posters that lined the walls. My name sat among them once. Long ago. Now it was just a ghost someone forgot to tear down. Sheriff Hartwell walked behind his desk. His boots creaked slow. He didn't offer me a seat. I didn't need one. The lockbox sat in the corner. Black iron, small enough to carry, heavy enough to ruin a man's peace. He leaned his hands on the desk. "You made noise last night," he said. 3 men dead, 1 hurt bad. "Self-defense," I said. "Always is," he muttered. "But you keep bringing storms where you ride, Mercer." "Storms find me," I said. "I just stand in the way." His jaw tightened. The rain outside had turned to a whisper against the windows, steady as breath. He watched me like a man measuring a noose. "You know those men?" he asked. "I've met worse," I said. "They mentioned something before they bled out. Said that box of yours ain't just about you." His eyes flickered toward it. For the first time since I walked in, I saw something like fear. It came quick, then vanished behind the badge. "What do you think's in there?" he asked. "Not my guess to make," I said. "But I figure it's worth killing over." He lit a cigarette, hand steady, but his voice not. "That box holds the kind of truth that don't set anyone free. Your daughter seems to think it might," I said. The cigarette paused halfway to his lips. "You stay away from her." "I didn't go looking," I said. "She found me." He exhaled slow. Smoke coiled toward the rafters. "She's got her mother's heart," he said. "Too much mercy for this place." "Mercy ain't her only trouble," I said. "She told me about the key." His eyes went cold. "She told you what?" "That she gave it away." He stood up, fast enough that the chair hit the wall. "You listen to me. Whatever that girl said, she don't understand what she's playing with." "Then make me understand," I said. He walked to the box and ran his hand over the lid like a priest over a grave. 10 years ago, before Dry Mesa had a name, there was a town called Elmsford, a place built on silver and sin. Men like me rode in to clean it up. Only we cleaned too deep. We found something buried that should have stayed lost. His voice broke, rough as gravel. The man who owned that mine wasn't just a thief. He was a killer, and I wasn't the law I claimed to be. I was hired by someone who wanted that killer gone, quietly. And that someone was me, I said. He froze. "What did you say?" I stepped closer, the floorboards groaning beneath my boots. "Elmsford. 10 years ago, I was a deputy under the name Clay Morgan. You were working for a ranch baron named Redden. I was the one who dragged those bodies out of the shaft after your men burned it." Recognition hit him like thunder. "You," he whispered, "you're the one who disappeared before the trials." "I disappeared because I saw what you buried," I said, "and I wasn't ready to hang for it." His hand dropped toward his gun, slow but sure. I didn't move. "That lockbox," I said, "is it the papers from that mine?" He hesitated, then nodded once. "Oh, proof that Redden ordered it. Proof that I carried it out. Proof that this badge started in blood." "And your daughter?" I asked. "She knows none of it." He looked toward the window, where dawn tried to fight through the glass. "She just knows I'm not the man I pretend to be." The silence after that felt like judgment. I stared at the box, wondering how much truth a man could hold before it broke him. A knock came at the door. Sharp, urgent. He gestured for quiet and opened it halfway. Deputy Crow stepped in, hat dripping rain. "Sheriff," he said, "well, you better come. Lyle's men are riding in from the south. 20, maybe more. They want blood." The sheriff swore under his breath. "Get the man set up at the bridge." Crow nodded and left. The door banged shut. Hartwell turned back to me. "You brought this here," he said. "I didn't bring anything," I said. "You just never buried it deep enough." He looked at the box again, then at me. "If they take this town, that truth dies with it." "Maybe that's mercy," I said. He shook his head. "Not for her. Not for Eliza." He moved toward the safe behind the desk and pulled out a small leather pouch. He tossed it to me. It was heavy with bullets. "If you're staying," he said, "then you fight with us. If you're leaving, do it before nightfall." I slipped the pouch into my belt. "I don't run anymore." He nodded once. "Then we understand each other." I turned to leave. His voice stopped me at the door. "Mercer," he said, "you still believe in redemption?" "Sometimes," I said, "but only when someone else deserves it." I stepped outside. The rain had stopped, but thunder still growled beyond the ridge. The air carried the promise of gunfire. Horses neighed somewhere down the street. Men shouted orders. Eliza stood near the hitching post, hair damp, coat too big for her small frame. She saw me and came forward. "My father?" she asked. "He's still fighting for what he believes," I said. Her lips trembled. "And you?" "I don't believe in much," I said, "but I'll stand where he stands until this is done." She looked at me like she wanted to stop me and didn't know how. "If this is my fault, it's no one's fault," I said, "just history catching up." The sky darkened again. Far off, hooves thundered like drums of war. She reached out and caught my sleeve. "Don't die for us, Colt." "I won't," I said, "but I might kill for you." Her breath caught, then she let go. I walked toward the bridge, the wind rising behind me, dust turning to smoke in the distance. If this story has stirred something quiet inside you, stay with it. The storm over Dry Mesa has only begun to speak. By dusk, the wind had turned cruel again. The sky sagged low, dark as a bruise. Dry Mesa stood still, waiting for what was coming. I took my post at the north edge of town near the bridge, where the land fell to the river flats. The sheriff's men crouched behind barrels and wagons, rifles ready, fear sharp in their throats. I checked my gun, felt its weight. The steel was warm from my palm, familiar as sin. The ground under me smelled of dust and rain that never finished falling. Sheriff Hartwell rode up slow, his horse restless beneath him. He wore no hat now, just the look of a man who lived too long with his own mistakes. "They're coming from the South Ridge," he said. "Scars hurt but alive. He wants that box. He won't stop until he's got it, or until we're all in the dirt." "You sure he'll come through the bridge?" I asked. "It's the only way that'll hold wagons. He needs them for the gold he thinks I've got." He scanned the horizon. A thin line of riders showed against the dying light, small at first, then growing. Dust and horses merging into one long shadow. "You ever think about running?" he asked. "Every day," I said. "But running just circles back on itself." He grunted, pulled his rifle from the saddle, and nodded. "Then let's finish this circle." The riders thundered closer. I could see their faces now, grins carved from hunger and hate. Scar rode in front, his wounded arm bound in bloodied cloth, his eyes bright with the fever of vengeance. He reined in halfway across the bridge and raised a hand. His men fanned out behind him. "Sheriff," he shouted, "you've got something that belongs to me." Hartwell stood tall beside me. "All I got is this town," and you can't have it." Scar laughed. "We'll see." He drew first. The crack of gunfire split the air. The echo ran up the canyon walls. Bullets hissed past my head. I dropped to one knee, aimed, fired. One rider fell. Then another. The air filled with smoke and thunder. The sheriff's men shouted, reloaded, fired again. Horses screamed. The bridge shook with the weight of chaos. Scar pushed forward, reckless, firing wild. I shot the man beside him and felt the heat of return fire graze my arm. Then came silence, brief, deadly. Through the smoke, I saw Scar leap from his horse and run toward the bank. He ducked behind a wagon, his shadow flickering in the muzzle flash. "Cover me," I said. The sheriff grabbed my arm. "He'll kill you." "Not if I get there first." I moved through the smoke, low and fast, boots sliding in mud. The world narrowed to sound and pulse. I reached the wagon and swung around the edge. Scar met me with a grin and a knife. We crashed together, the blade catching my coat. I slammed my shoulder into him, sent him sprawling into the mud. His knife flashed again. I caught his wrist, twisted, heard it crack. He roared, tried to punch. I ducked, drove my elbow into his ribs, then hit him once more, hard enough to make him still. He spat blood, laughing between gasps. "You don't even know what you're fighting for." "I'm fighting because I'm tired of running," I said. He smiled, teeth red. "You think the sheriff's the villain? You should see the papers in that box. His hands ain't the only ones dirty." I stared at him. "Meaning what?" "Meaning yours, Mercer. That name of yours ain't real. Clay Morgan signed those orders too." The words hit colder than rain. "You're lying." "Am I?" he rasped. "You pulled the trigger that buried 100 men. Ask your conscience if it remembers." I stepped back. The noise around us faded to a hum. My gun hung loose at my side. For a moment the world tilted. Scar saw it. He lunged. The knife came fast, slicing through smoke. I fired once, point blank. He fell backward, his face slack, the blade still in his hand. The storm broke again, wind screaming, rain hammering down like judgment. I stood over him until the thunder drowned my heartbeat. The sheriff came running. "You alive?" "Mostly," I said. He looked at the body. "Scar?" "Not anymore." The rain washed blood from my hands, but not from my thoughts. His words lingered. Clay Morgan, the past I'd buried under new names and false miles. Hartwell clapped my shoulder. "You saved this town." "No," I said. "I just delayed its ghost." We rode back through the rain. The bridge lay littered with the dead, smoke drifting like prayers with nowhere to go. By the time we reached town, the lamps were burning low. The men cheered, hollow and tired. Eliza stood outside the saloon, her dress soaked, eyes wide. She ran to me before I could dismount. "You're hurt," she said. "It's nothing." She touched the blood at my sleeve, fingers trembling. "Don't tell me that." Her voice cracked, and I felt something break quiet inside me. I wanted to tell her everything, that I wasn't who she had thought, that my hands were no cleaner than her father's, but her eyes stopped me. They held too much hope, too much light for a man like me. "You did it," she whispered. "You saved him." "For now," I said, "but the truth's still coming." She looked up at me, rain running down her face like tears she refused to shed. "Then let it come. Whatever it is, we'll face it." Her words were soft, but they felt like a promise I didn't deserve. Behind her, the sheriff stood watching, the lamplight catching the badge on his chest. For a moment, father and daughter looked the same, strong, weary, unbroken. I tipped my hat to him. We'll talk tomorrow. He nodded once. Slow. Tomorrow. I turned away, boots heavy, heart heavier. The rain eased. The world smelled of wet dust and burned gunpowder. Somewhere, a piano started again inside the saloon. Soft, slow, like forgiveness, trying to find its way home. If this story has kept your heart close to the fire, stay with it. The night still hides the truth neither law nor love can bury. By morning, Dry Mesa breathed like a wounded animal. Smoke still drifted from the bridge, and the air tasted of iron and ash. Men moved slow through the streets, cleaning what was left of the fight. Victory never looked like triumph out here, just fewer graves to dig. I hadn't slept. My arm burned where the bullet grazed it. Whiskey dulled the ache, but not the thoughts clawing behind my ribs. Scar's voice still echoed. Clay Morgan, my name once. A name that belonged to the man who'd carried out orders he no longer remembered giving. The sheriff called for me at dawn. I found him behind his office, sleeves rolled, shoveling dirt over 2 fresh graves. His badge hung loose on his vest. He looked smaller without the hat and gun belt, just another man trying to outlive what he'd done. 2 of my boys, he said quietly, didn't even know what they were dying for. Most men don't, I said. He leaned on the shovel, sweat streaking the dust on his face. You could have left last night. Why didn't you? I thought about it, I said, but running don't change the road behind you. He nodded once. That's the truest thing I've heard in years. We stood in silence until he spoke again, voice low. Scar said something before he died, about your name. He said too much. Was he right? I looked at the graves. He was. The sheriff's eyes narrowed. Clay Morgan, you were part of Elmsford. I was more than part, I said. I was the one who followed your orders, the one who sealed that mine. His jaw tightened. Then you know why it had to be done. I know why you told yourself it did. He looked away. You think I sleep easy? No, I said, but you sleep alive. That's more than most of them got. The wind picked up, dry and mean. He drove the shovel into the ground. The sound sharp as a gunshot. That box in my office, it's got your name too. You want to burn it? I'll let you. You want to open it? You'll wish you hadn't. Before I could answer, the sound of footsteps broke the air. Eliza came around the corner, shawl pulled tight, her eyes tired but still fierce. You 2 finished burying the dead? She asked. Not yet, I said. She looked at her father, then at me. The town's whispering. They think you're both devils fighting over one soul. Maybe they're right, I said. Her gaze softened. Then maybe devils deserve a chance to tell their side. The sheriff stepped back, wiping his hands. You shouldn't be here. I'm done hiding, she said. You said once a lie can rot a town from the inside. Well, maybe it's time to open the windows. Her courage was quiet but sharp. I felt it in my chest, the kind of truth a man wants to believe, even when he knows it'll break him. She turned to me. You want to see what's in that box, don't you? I do. Then I'll stand with you when you do it. The sheriff shook his head. You don't know what you're asking for. Neither do you, she said. He looked at her for a long time, then sighed and walked away. Fine, but when this breaks us, don't say I didn't warn you. We followed him into the office. The morning light slanted through the blinds, catching dust that hung like ghosts. He unlocked the box and stepped back. Inside were 3 things: a revolver, a leather-bound ledger, and a folded letter sealed with wax. The sheriff stared at them like old sins made solid. He picked up the letter and handed it to me. "That's yours." I broke the seal. The paper smelled of dust and oil. The handwriting was mine, Clay Morgan's, written 10 years ago in a camp I barely remembered. "Sheriff Hartwell, you were right. The mine had to go, but Redden lied. There were women and children in the tunnels. I saw their faces before we lit the fuse. If you read this, it means I didn't hang. If I didn't hang, it means I ran. I'll carry their ghosts wherever I go." Clay, my throat closed. The words blurred. The sheriff watched, eyes hollow. "You never sent it," I said. "I couldn't," he answered. "I found it after you left. I kept it so I'd remember what it cost us." Eliza pressed a hand to her mouth. "God," she whispered, "I'm out. You both." She looked between us, her voice breaking. "You both built this town on their graves." Neither of us spoke. The wind rattled the window like a confession. "I didn't know," I said finally. "I thought it was MIT." "Redden made sure we did," Hartwell said. "He wanted silence, not truth." "And you gave it to him," I said. "He didn't deny it, until it started choking me." Eliza turned to me, tears bright in her eyes. "You said you'd stop running." "I meant it," I said, "but standing still doesn't mean peace." She stepped closer, her voice low. "Then let's make peace another way." She took the letter from my hand and laid it back in the box. "This truth doesn't belong to men like Redden. It belongs to the dead." The sheriff watched her, something shifting behind his eyes. Respect, maybe, or the start of forgiveness. She closed the lid. "We'll bury it tonight," she said, "properly this time." I nodded. "I'll dig the hole myself." For the first time in days, silence felt clean. The sheriff put a hand on his daughter's shoulder. I saw the weight lift from him, just a little. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, pale and trembling. The light touched her hair like a promise the world might still keep. If this story has eased a quiet ache in your heart, stay near the fire. The truth of Dry Mesa has only begun to rise from its grave. By evening, the desert turned red, the kind of red that makes men quiet, the kind that remembers blood. Dry Mesa was hushed, except for the wind that carried smoke from the bridge and the rustle of canvas as the townsfolk patched roofs and counted the cost of surviving. I dug behind the church, shovel biting hard earth. The lockbox sat beside me, heavy and still. Every sound of metal against dirt echoed like a clock marking guilt. The sheriff stood a few paces off, hat in hand. Eliza knelt near the grave we'd chosen, a place beneath the cottonwoods, where the ground stayed soft and the shadows kind. "This is where the miners are buried," she said softly, "the ones they could find." Her words made the wind pause. I looked up, saw her fingers brushing the carved stones, worn smooth by time. She placed the folded letter over the box before I lowered it. The sheriff cleared his throat. "Say something," he said. "I'm not much for prayer," I said. "Then speak plain," he said. I stared at the hole, the black iron waiting. "To the ones we took, to the ones we forgot, I can't give back your names, but I'll carry them longer than I carried mine. Maybe that's worth something." Eliza bowed her head. "It's worth remembering." We covered the box until the earth leveled flat again. No marker, no sign. Just wind and soil sealing a truth the world wasn't ready to forgive. When it was done, the sheriff turned and walked away slow. Shoulders bent, Eliza stayed. The light caught her hair, turning it gold against the fading blue. You still think redemption's for someone else? She asked. I think it's for fools, I said, but tonight I don't mind being one. She smiled. Small, real. Then you're halfway there. We stood until the stars began to show, the first ones faint and trembling. I hadn't felt that kind of quiet in years. She broke it. He told me once the West only takes, that it doesn't give anything back. He's wrong, I said. Sometimes it gives a second chance. You just have to dig for it. The wind shifted. Cold air rolled in from the canyons. She stepped closer, her shawl brushing my arm. Do you believe we can start over? No, I said, but I believe we can stop running from the start we already had. She looked up at me then, eyes dark as the sky before rain. There was something there that made my heart slow down, the kind of look that doesn't ask for a promise, just truth. Her hand found mine, small, warm, alive. You don't owe me anything, she said. Maybe not, I said, but I owe you honesty. Her breath caught. Then say it. I stepped closer, close enough to smell the dust in her hair, the lilac faint beneath the day's sweat. I tried to forget you when I walked away from that saloon. I tried again when you whispered in that alley. I've failed every time since. She looked at me like she could see the man beneath all the names. Then don't fail now. The air thickened. The night around us went still. Her fingers lifted to my face, tracing the scar along my jaw. It burned and healed under her touch all at once. I didn't move. I just let it happen. When she leaned in, the world disappeared. No law, no lies, no graves, just breath and heartbeat and a taste of something that felt like peace. The kiss wasn't desperate. It was slow, careful, like two people learning what mercy felt like. When we broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. I should be scared, she whispered. So should I said, but I'm not. We stood like that while the stars came alive above the church roof. The storm had left the sky clean, sharp enough to make a man believe in grace again. A bell rang somewhere far off. The sheriff's voice called faintly down the street, giving orders for the patrols. The sound brought us back. You should go, she said softly. I will, I said, after I remember what this feels like. Her eyes closed. What does it feel like? Like forgiveness, I said, and fire. She smiled, eyes shining with something I couldn't name. Then don't forget either. I stepped back, the distance between us sudden and heavy. Tomorrow will be harder, I said. It always is, she answered. The wind stirred again, carrying the smell of rain that wouldn't fall. I watched her walk back toward the lights of town, her silhouette small against the vast dark. When she was gone, I looked up at the stars. They stared back, cold and endless. I thought about the dead beneath my boots, the living I couldn't save, and the woman who had made both feel like something worth carrying. The West never forgets, but sometimes it forgives just enough to let a man breathe. If this story has warmed a quiet corner of your night, keep your heart near the fire. The storm that heals is still waiting beyond the dawn. The dawn came soft and strange, like it wasn't sure this town deserved light. Dust floated in gold sheets through the streets, catching on the edges of torn banners and broken signs. Dry Mesa looked peaceful for the first time in years, but peace in the West never lasts. It only catches its breath. I walked to the stables, saddle creaking under my arm. My horse snorted, ears twitching at the smell of leftover smoke. The town was quiet, except for a hammer somewhere far off, rebuilding what bullets had broken. I told myself I'd ride at noon, head north, before the desert remembered my name. But when I saw her walking through the morning haze, I knew I wasn't leaving yet. Eliza carried a bundle of bread and cloth from the church. Her eyes found mine like she'd known I'd be there. She smiled, small and cautious, the kind that happens when a heart wants to trust again, but remembers too much. "You're still here," she said. "Leaving's harder when there's reason to stay," I said. She set the bundle on the fence rail. "You think you'll find redemption out there?" "I'll settle for rest." Her voice softened. "You won't find either if you keep running from what you want." I looked at her, the morning sun catching the wet glint in her hair. "And what do you think I want?" Her breath hitched. "I think you already know." The air thickened, that slow pull between danger and something gentler. The kind of pull that made a man forget every rule he swore to live by. "I shouldn't," I said. "Neither should I," she answered. The space between us closed. I felt her hand against my chest, light but certain. Her heartbeat matched mine, fast, uneven. She looked up. "Then don't say anything." Her lips met mine, soft, trembling, sure. The world went quiet again. All I could feel was warmth and the faint taste of salt and dust. The kiss deepened, slow and certain. Like time itself had stopped to listen. I broke it first, just enough to breathe. "If your father saw..." She pressed a finger to my mouth. "He knows," she whispered. "He's always known I'd love a man I shouldn't." The words hit deep. "You don't know what kind of man I am." "Yes, I do," she said. "You're the kind that carries guilt instead of greed. That's rarer than good." I didn't answer. Words would have broken the silence that made everything real. I pulled her close again, one hand at her waist, the other tangled in her hair. The world disappeared into heat and heartbeat. The stable smelled of hay and leather, the air thick with dust. Light cut through the boards like shards of gold. Her breath trembled against my throat. I felt her fingers slide up my chest, felt the tremor in her touch, the hesitation that wasn't fear but memory. I kissed her again, slower this time, letting the stillness between breaths do the talking. The moment burned steady, not wild, just right, like a fire that knew how not to destroy. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were wet but steady. "You make the world quiet," she said. Nah, only for a little while," I said. She smiled. "That's enough." We stood like that, the silence between us too full to name. I didn't know what future meant in a place where past sins grew like weeds, but for that heartbeat, I didn't care. Then came the sound, hooves, fast and urgent, voices shouting down the main road. The kind of noise that ends quiet before it begins. The sheriff rode hard toward the stables, dust kicking up behind him. He reined in, eyes sharp, coat flaring. "Trouble?" I asked. He nodded, breath tight. "Redden's men crossed the canyon. They want what's buried. Someone told them it's here." Eliza froze. "They know about the box?" "More than that," he said. "They know about the letter." I stepped forward. "How?" The sheriff looked past me. "Because someone in town talked. Said they saw you two bury it." The weight of his words hit her harder than a bullet. "You think I don't think," he said. "I just know they're coming." I felt the air shift, the peace breaking, the world sliding back toward violence. I holstered my gun, tightened my belt. "How many?" I asked. "Dozen, maybe more." I looked at Eliza. Her face had gone pale, but her chin stayed high. Then we finish what we started, I said. The sheriff nodded. I'll take the bridge again. I'll take the ridge, I said. He hesitated. If we don't make it, then at least it'll be honest, I said. He spurred his horse and was gone, dust rising in his wake. Eliza caught my arm before I turned. Colt. I looked back. Her eyes shimmered with everything she couldn't say. Come back, she whispered. I'll try. She shook her head. Don't try. Promise. I held her gaze. I don't make promises I can't keep. Her lips trembled, then steadied, then make one anyway. I touched her cheek, wiped a tear that rain hadn't made. I'll come back, I said. Alive, she whispered, alive. She closed her eyes, holding the word like prayer. I swung into the saddle, turned my horse toward the ridge, and felt the storm gather again behind my ribs. The air smelled of dust, danger, and lilac. If this story has reached that tender place inside you, stay close to the fire. The desert wind has one more storm left to tell. By the time I reached the ridge, the sun had bled itself out behind the canyon. The world below was a blur of shadow and dust, a desert holding its breath before violence. I could see them, Reddin's men riding hard along the riverbed, rifles glinting like teeth in dying light. I tied my horse in the scrub, crouched behind a boulder, and loaded my rifle slow and steady. The wind up here carried everything, the smell of gun oil, the faint echo of shouts, and the memory of Eliza's voice whispering alive. Below, the sheriff's men took their posts along the bridge again. Hartwell stood tall, the kind of tall that came from guilt trying to look like courage. His silhouette cut against the rising dust like a last line drawn in the sand. When the first shot cracked, it came from Reddin's side. The sound rolled through the canyon and shattered the quiet clean in two. I sighted through the scope, aimed for the man waving his arm, and pulled the trigger. He dropped, dust puffing around him. Then chaos. Gunfire echoed up and down the ridge. The bridge smoked under the clash. Horses screamed. Men shouted names they'd never hear answered. I fired until the rifle's chamber burned my fingers, then switched to my revolver. Every shot found a shadow. Every shadow looked like the past, trying to crawl back from the grave. Reddin himself rode in last. White hat, black coat, the kind of man who made sin look like business. He dismounted, calm amid the storm, and shouted something I couldn't hear, but his voice carried power. His men rallied, driving hard toward the bridge. Hartwell's line began to falter. Too many, too fast. I ran down the slope, sliding through dust and rock, firing as I went. One bullet grazed my leg. Another splintered the ground beside me. I didn't stop. When I reached the edge of the bridge, the sheriff was down on one knee, reloading, with blood running down his sleeve. He looked up, saw me, and grinned, the kind of grin men wear when they know they're outnumbered but not out of fight. About time, he said. I took position beside him. You hold the center, I said. I'll push left. He nodded. Reddin's mine. I didn't argue. Some warsmen have to finish themselves. I broke for the far side, bullets screaming past like angry hornets. I fired blind once, twice, felt one man fall. Smoke choked the air, mixing with sweat and gunpowder until it tasted like fire. Through it, I saw her. Eliza. She shouldn't have been there, but there she was, running from the church steps toward us, her dress torn, shawl whipping in the wind. She carried something in her hands, wrapped in linen. Damn it, I muttered, breaking cover. Eliza, She didn't stop. A rider broke from the enemy line, gun drawn, charging straight for her. I fired once, missed, twice, hit. The man spun off his horse, but his bullet flew wild, toward her. She stumbled as the sound cracked, fell to her knees. I was there before I knew I'd moved, dropping beside her, catching her shoulders. Blood darkened the fabric near her ribs. She gasped, eyes wide with shock more than pain. "No," I said, "no, stay with me." She pressed the bundle into my hands. "The letter," she whispered, "they can't have it." Her fingers were slick with blood, but steady. I looked down. She'd taken it from the grave, wrapped it, brought it here like salvation. "You should have stayed away," I said. She tried to smile. "You wouldn't have." Behind me, Redden's voice cut through the noise. "Mercer." I turned. He stood in the smoke, gun drawn, coat billowing. "You and that sheriff cost me 10 years. Hand it over." I rose slow, one hand on my gun, the other gripping the bundle. "This letter's worth your life." "It's worth your death," he said. "I hope we fired at the same time." His bullet grazed my side. Mine caught his chest. He stumbled, eyes wide, fell backward into the dust that had once made him rich. Silence followed, heavy and wide. The gunfire faded. His men broke and ran. The storm was done. I turned back. The sheriff was there now, kneeling beside his daughter. He lifted her hand, pressed it to his chest, whispering words I couldn't hear, the kind that break a man's voice. She looked at me once more. "You kept your promise," she said softly. "Alive." "I will be," I said, "because you wanted it." Her breath caught. The light faded from her eyes like dusk slipping over the plains. The sheriff bowed his head. The wind came again, soft this time, carrying dust over the bridge, washing blood from the boards. I looked at her face, still and calm, like the desert after rain. The sheriff stood. "She believed in something we didn't," he said. "She believed we could stop running," I said. He nodded. "Then let's not waste it." We buried her where the cottonwoods met the ridge, near the place where the letter first saw daylight. The sky burned red again, the color of endings. If this story has reached deep where silence lives, stay close. The night that follows will ask what love is worth when the dust finally settles. The sun never rose right the next morning. It crawled over the desert slow and heavy, spilling dull light over town that had forgotten how to wake. The wind was quiet, carrying nothing but the smell of burnt gunpowder and grief. We buried Eliza beneath the cottonwoods, the same ground that had taken our sins the night before. Her shawl was folded beneath her hands, her hair brushed smooth like the morning she first walked into that saloon. No preacher spoke, no choir sang, only the desert, still as judgment. The sheriff knelt beside her grave, hat pressed to his chest. "She was the best part of me," he said. I didn't answer. There was no word big enough to hold what that woman had been. Mercy in a place that forgot the meaning. I stood a few steps away, hat low, feeling the air around us change, lighter in some way, heavier in another. When he stood, his face looked older by 20 years. "Redden's dead," he said, "but that don't make things right." "No," I said, "but it makes them quieter." He studied me for a long time. "You staying?" "I haven't decided." He nodded, the kind of nod men give when they understand something hurts too much to say. "I'm taking her to the ridge later. She always wanted to see the river from up there. I'll help." He put a hand on my shoulder, heavy, grateful. "You've done enough. Go where the dust don't follow. I looked at the grave one last time, the soft mound of earth beneath the shade. The sky was turning the color of smoke. The dust always follows, I said. I walked back through town, past broken windows, bullet holes, and silence that had forgotten its own name. Folks nodded, whispered. Some looked at me like a savior, others like a curse. They were both right. At the saloon, the barkeep slid me a bottle without asking. For her, he said. I nodded, took a drink, let it burn through the ache. The piano in the corner was still broken from the fight, one key stuck high. Its silence suited the place. Outside, the sheriff's horse carried a small figure wrapped in white toward the ridge. The town watched him go, hats off, eyes low. Dust rose behind him and drifted away, like smoke leaving a fire gone cold. I stayed until the sun fell. Then I rode out the other way. The desert opened wide, endless as regret. I rode slow, letting the wind pull through my coat, the reins loosen my hands. Every step of the horse sounded like a heartbeat that wouldn't settle. I stopped at the bluff above the river, the same place where the mine once stood, 10 years and 100 ghosts ago. The land there was still scarred, black rock split open, silent but alive in its ruin. I dismounted, walked to the edge, and let the wind take the hat from my hand. It tumbled into the canyon and vanished. For a long time, I said nothing. Then I spoke to the wind. Eliza Hartwell, I said, you walked into a storm meant for men, and somehow it was the storm that broke first. The echo carried, then fell quiet. I reached into my coat and took out the letter she died to save. The pages were torn, the ink blurred with her blood and mine. I read the words one last time, then held them over the canyon. You can rest now, I whispered. No, the paper caught the wind, lifted high, and disappeared into the light. Behind me, a voice spoke. You think she'd forgive us? The sheriff stood there, coat dusted, eyes hollow. I hadn't heard him right up. No, I said, but I think she'd hope we learn how to. He nodded, stepped beside me. We watched the last of the paper drift away until the wind took it whole. What will you do now? He asked. Head north. Maybe find a place where nobody remembers the names that built this one. He looked out at the river. If you ever come back, there'll be a seat at my table. She'd want that. I know, I said. He turned his horse, rode off slow, a lone figure crossing the plain. I stayed until the horizon swallowed him. The sky bled into night again, stars flickering through the smoke like half-remembered prayers. I thought about what she'd said that last time in the stables. You make the world quiet. Now the world was quiet, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind of quiet that comes when the story's almost over, when the ghosts have spoken their piece and left you to decide what kind of man you'll be when the sun rises. I mounted up, turned north, and let the horse find its own pace. The wind moved behind me, carrying whispers through the sage. I didn't look back. If this story has settled somewhere deep and still inside you, stay close. The dawn waits beyond the dust, and it carries what's left of redemption's light. Morning came soft and pale, rolling over the desert like a sigh. The storm had passed, but its scent still lingered, rain and dust and something that felt like memory. The sky stretched wide and empty, washed clean of violence. For the first time in a long while, Dry Mesa was quiet. I rode back at sunrise, slow, no hurry in my bones. The town looked smaller now, humbled. The saloon's windows gleamed faintly in the light. The church bell hung still, and the cottonwoods by the grave swayed gentle in the morning wind. I dismounted, tied my horse to the fence, and walked up the hill toward her. Eliza's grave was covered in fresh wildflowers. Someone had placed a silver hairpin on the mound. I guessed it was her father's doing. The man had learned silence better than prayer. I stood there a while, hat in my hand, listening to the world she'd left behind. "You were right," I said quietly. "We can stop running. We just have to let go of what chased us." The wind stirred, soft against my cheek, like a whisper too faint to catch. I smiled despite it hurting. Down in town, I saw Sheriff Hartwell standing outside his office, talking low with a few ranchers. He looked up, saw me, and nodded once. The kind of nod that didn't need words, just understanding. I walked down to him, boots kicking dust. "You heading out?" he asked. "I am," I said. "North, maybe further if the road allows." He took a slow breath. "There's land up by Bitter Creek, old ranch nobody's claimed. You could make something there." "Maybe," I said, "but I've never been much of a builder." He looked toward the hills. "Then at least let her be what you build from." I nodded. "That's the plan." He offered his hand. I took it. His grip was firm, dry, full of what he couldn't say. When he let go, his eyes were wet. "I ain't much for gratitude," he said. "But she loved you, Mercer. That makes you family in some way." I swallowed hard. "Then take care of what's left of it." He nodded. "I will." I turned toward the horse. The morning sun caught the metal of my gun, glinting like something that used to matter. I loosened it from my belt, looked at it one last time, then set it on the hitching post. "I'm done with iron," I said. Hartwell watched but didn't speak. He just tipped his hat. I climbed into the saddle and faced the open desert. The wind tugged at my coat, warm now, carrying the smell of sage and sunlight. The land stretched endless ahead, gold and red, whispering with all the things a man could never change but might still forgive. I felt lighter, emptied maybe, but clean in the way rain empties the sky. As I rode out of town, the sound of hooves echoed soft, like a heartbeat I didn't need to rush. Every mile that passed took me further from who I'd been, and closer to something I didn't yet have words for. Behind me, Dry Mesa shrank into a shimmer of dust and light. I didn't look back. The horizon opened, wide, waiting, merciful. I thought of Eliza, the way she'd said you make the world quiet, the way she'd touched my scar like it could heal her too. I spoke to the wind as I rode. If you can hear me, I'm keeping my promise. I'm still alive. And maybe that was enough. The sun climbed higher, turning the sand to fire, the sky to silver. Somewhere far behind, the bell rang once, clear as water. The sound followed me until it faded into wind. I smiled. The world was quiet again, but this time it felt like peace. If this story has touched a tender place in your heart, let your light stay with us. Comment, share, and subscribe so this Western fire keeps burning for you.